The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back loving baseball when we were 12. And it's All-Star Weekend. Hal Bock, George Case, and Alan Blumkin join me, Ralph Tyko, to talk about the All-Star Game when we were age 12 and how we loved baseball then, and how, for me, age 12 is important because intellect matches passion for a kid. At age 12, we knew enough about baseball that it became a passion, and we were passionate enough about it to learn. So for me, it was 1957 when the Giants and Dodgers moved, and my passion became initially the Milwaukee Braves, who were in the World Series, and they had a great array of all-stars because when the Giants moved, I was a National Leaguer. I wasn't going to be a Yankee fan. And the Braves really did it for me, at least for a while, until the Mets got to New York. So I'm going to ask the panelists if they wouldn't share what it was like, what their impressions were like of the All-Star Game when they were 12, and to break it down, to make it interesting, which All-Stars, when you were a kid at age 12, did you respect the most? Which ones were, for me, it was always Willie, of course, but I love the underdog, the overachiever, the Ron Hunts of the world, and that kind of thing. So I'm going to start with you, Al Blumkin. Put yourself back when you were 12 and talk to me about what the All-Star Game was about at that time.
Well, I was from 1954, when I was 11, through 1957, I was in camp, summer camp, so I didn't get a chance to see anything. In fact, in 1971, when Reggie Jackson had that attack, I listened to it on the radio because I was in summer camp with the Army Reserves. But in 1957, there were two parts. There was the camp for the kids, and on the other side there was a resort for the summer. And of course, in the camp they had no TVs. And so me and a few other guys, kids, snuck over to the resort side and watched for 6 innings before they, we were told to leave.
A good baseball fan will catch their passion wherever they are. That was early on for you and indicative. 54 All-Stars, Willie Mays, of course, in his prime, his first prime.
A couple of guys named... There's a couple of guys named Williams and Musial. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Interesting topic that we could talk about either now or later is... You mentioned Williams, who hurt himself in the All-Star Game.
Yeah.
Broke. And was that 54?
No, it's 50.
Oh, okay.
He was chasing a fly ball, and he hit his elbow on the concrete wall and broke it, and he was out for most of the rest of the season. He had 97 RBIs that year and a half a season.
Oh, wow. So you snuck away, you snuck in, and you watched baseball. Do you remember the game at all that you watched?
The only thing I really remember is Minnie Minoso fielded a hit and threw the runner out. There's a runner on first, and he got thrown out at second base.
Well,
I couldn't believe that. I don't think I've seen that too often since.
Great. Hey, let's talk to George Case for a second. I'd love to hear your voice, George, and missed it. You're back from vacation. Tell us a little bit about your vacation.
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, we were up in Maine. I've been going to Maine since I was 7 years old. It was the year my dad retired, and he took my family up to Maine for the first time and fell in love with the place. And now it's my 3 children, my 6 grandchildren, and now we have a great-granddaughter and my sister. And it's really a family time, and we all get together and really enjoy Maine and the fishing and the cool weather and the nights with fireplaces, and it's just beautiful up there. And last year we had to miss because of COVID with the travel restrictions. But this year we all got together and just had a wonderful time. I do want to mention one thing as far as my own experience, and I'm older than you guys. When Ralph talks about 12 years old, I was 12 years old playing Little League baseball, and my memory is of All-Star games because we loved it, but that was when they were really All-Star games, and there was no this crazy stuff about interleague play, and it was which league was better. My dad played against a lot of the All-Stars. Williams and Boudreau, Mantle. I mean, Mays was in the National League, but Willie, played ball in Trenton. I remember seeing him when I was 10 years old. He was playing baseball in Trenton. So, I have a lot of great memories of the All-Star game.
Outfit?
What's that?
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second because I have a memory of you telling me about how the Giants sent Willie to your dad's store, sporting goods store.
Yeah, he did.
And he outfitted Willie.
They did. Willie came up from Birmingham. He was in Trenton for about 2 months, playing for the Trenton Giants. At the time, the Giants were a farm club of the New York Giants. Then he went to Minneapolis. But my dad in a sporting goods store and had, a lot of contacts, obviously, in baseball, but he got a phone call from the Giants front office, and they said, George, we're sending a young man down to your store. We think he's a pretty good prospect. His name is Willie Mays, and give him whatever equipment he needs and send the bill to us. So, that was quite an understatement, and as it turned out, my dad always laughed. He
22
said,
All-Star games Willie played in.
He said, I think that Willie turned out to be more than just a pretty good prospect. So
yes, pretty good. That's. Have either of the three of you seen any better than Willie Mays?
No, are you kidding?
No, I haven't either. And I'm just going to chip in here because, we talk about players. I mean, Clemente and a few others who are five-tool players. But, Willie Mays was a definite five-tool player, could do it all. And he was the best I ever saw.
Yeah, Bill James, the historical abstract they came out with years ago, ranked all the positions by career and peak. And he had Mays for career and Mantle for peak.
I was just thinking about that this afternoon, how when I was a kid hating the Yankees, I missed out on worshiping Mickey Mantle, but I sure worship him. Looking back, well documented, and Alan and I were talking a few months ago about the YouTube 1969 retirement. They've got Mickey Mantle, everybody, including Joe DiMaggio, everybody but Yogi, came back to honor him in 1969, and when he retired, and it still brings goosebumps just talking about it to me. The 18-minute standing ovation, unbelievable. What
I
could have
couldn't be
been?
there. Yeah, I couldn't be there because I was in Army Reserve summer camp.
Yeah, well, I made very few All-Star games or old-timers days because of my camp experience. It was summer camp. It wasn't Army camp, but that's the one thing I missed out on as a kid. But in return for some terrific camp experiences at Kittatinny Camp in Dingman's Ferry, Pennsylvania. Hal Bock, let me hear from you a little bit about your All-Star memories, if you will.
Well, I covered many All-Star games in my career at the Associated Press. The one that sticks out in my mind was 50 years ago this week when they played in Detroit, Tiger Stadium. And there were 22 players that night who would wind up in the Hall of Fame. So that's an array of All-Stars. I mean, it just was amazing. And in the third or fourth inning, I'm not sure which, Reggie Jackson was sent up to pinch hit. He was with the Oakland A's at that time. And he pinch hit against Doc Ellis, who was with the Pirates at that time. And Reggie Jackson hit a home run that night. That may still be going. I mean, it collided with a light tower at Tiger Stadium. It was the greatest home run I've ever seen, the most prodigious home run I ever saw in my life. And it's still remembered 50 years later by many people who were there, who saw it on TV. It was an amazing shot. That was the year after Pete Rose collided with Ray Fosse, scoring the winning run in the All-Star game in extra innings for the National League, and effectively ended Fosse's productive career as a catcher. I don't know, broke his shoulder or separated his shoulder, and that was the end of Fosse. So those are the two games that stick out in my mind. There have been other great All-Star games over the years. The one that not most people remember, because most people who were there aren't here anymore. But in 1934, the second All-Star game, Carl Hubbell was pitching for the National League. And the first two batters got on base for the American League, Charlie Gehringer and Heine Groh. And, Heine Minouche. And Hubbell then went on a streak of 5 straight. He struck out some of the greatest sluggers in baseball history. It started with Babe Ruth. Ruth was the first strikeout. Then he struck out Lou Gehrig. And then he struck out Jimmy Fox on 3 pitches. That ended the inning. And the second inning, Al Simmons led off, and he struck out. And then that brought up Joe Cronin, and he struck out. So that's 5 straight sluggers, Hall of Fame players, that Hubbell struck out in the All-Star game. And that was a major event in baseball history. But by and large, I'm not a fan of the All-Star game, not anymore.
Would you for a second go back to when you were 12 and talk about who was playing in the All-Star game then?
Sure.
And what were your impressions of those guys? And any lasting memories that you had for later on covering Old Timers Day and what have you? How old? What year was it when you were 12, Hal?
I would like to point out to George that I was 12 in 1951, which makes me older than him.
Okay, so, you got me out by a year.
All right.
Age has its privilege on Comfortably Zoned Radio Network.
I was 12 in 1951. The players that I remember best from that year, from that collision of the two leagues, would have been Stan Musial, Jackie Robinson for the National League, Ted Williams for the American League. I was flabbergasted by these players. Watching them play, it was an education. It was just watching the abilities that these guys had was fantastic. And of course, at that time, 1951, the summer of 1951, there was a fellow named Willie Mays who was breaking in here in New York, and he caught my attention pretty well too. So those were the players that I really thought about a lot in those days. And the All-Star Game at that time, they call it the Midsummer Classic, and that's really what it was. I mean, it was a gathering of the greatest players in the game. Now today, first of all, they didn't have interleague play. So they didn't have these players playing against each other during the regular season. And that took, the interleague play, in my mind, took away some of the glamour of the All-Star Game, which was the first time these players would be against each other than in the World Series. So right. I think the interleague play hurt the All-Star Game in that respect. What also hurt is that players don't want to go. Players would rather have those days off. The Houston Astros had 4 players named to the All-Star team this year, and all 4 of them said, we'll pass on it, thanks. Thanks, but no thanks. So, I mean, it's not as important to the players as it once was. Back in the day, and you asked me about 1951, the president of the National League was Warren Giles in the 50s, 60s. And he made it like a mission to beat the American League. It was like it was war. We're going to beat those guys. We're going to show them. Well, I don't think that kind of zest exists today in the players who are in these games. The home run derby took something away from that as well. I think today the home run derby gets more attention than the game itself. But I'll leave that open.
And it disgusts me that it does, and I don't think it's good for baseball or good for ball players to be thinking home run all through this thing. Is that going to affect a player's swing? And has it?
It has.
Already?
In my mind, it has.
Yes, I agree.
David Wright came back from the All-Star Game from the home run derby, and he couldn't hit the side of a barn. I mean, his swing was all screwed up because he was trying to hit home runs in the home run derby. So I agree with you. They could do away with the home run derby, and I'd have no complaint.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't my imagination, but how good can that be for the competition of the game? You got half the season's left.
You still worry about the competition of the game when we have 7-inning doubleheaders and when we have a random player on second base in extra innings? How he got there, nobody knows. And you still worry about the competition?
That's going to change.
I know. Yeah.
Next year. I don't know about the runners starting out on second. Will that change as well?
They're talking about it.
Okay, good.
But they've already had 2 years in which they've had an assault on the record books. The records now are meaningless because teams and players have accomplished things in these last 2 years, not so much last year because it was only a 60-game season, but all of the numbers are all turned around because of this.
Yes.
Teams won games they never should have won. So I don't know. That's just passed me by, I guess. I don't know.
I still have a record. I will not listen. If a game is going to go extra innings, I turn it off. And don't listen. I'll pick it up later. Whatever it was, it's might as well be a game in like a pinball machine game, as far as I'm concerned.
They've turned it into a carnival. They've turned it into a sideshow, and I resent that because that's my game they were messing with,
Right.
Can I say something, please?
Yes.
Okay, I agree with Hal. 100%. The other thing that really, got me upset was when they went the 4 seasons, 59 through 62. They had 2 All-Star games.
Yeah.
And that took away from the one. They went 1963. They went back to 1. But the last time I watched them full was in 1981, 40 years ago, when they came back from the strike. And people ask me why I don't. I said, if I want to watch a pitch an inning, I can put on any regular season game. And I think free agency hurt it a lot because, players started moving between leagues all the time. You couldn't imagine Mickey Mantle playing in the National League or Willie Mays playing for the American League. It was just impossible.
Right.
That's right. The movement of players has become much more widespread, and that also takes away from the uniqueness of the All-Star game, the National League against the American League. Well, who's on the National League team? Oh, he used to be on the American League team.
Yeah.
So that's hurt it as well. I just think I treat it as an afterthought. I treat it as 3 days away from the game or 4 days away from the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know.
George,
I have a friend who worked in baseball for many years who refuses to watch anything related to baseball during this 4 days off. He just won't watch any of it.
Yeah.
He takes it as a vacation from the game, and I can understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was at one once. I was at the 1977 All-Star game in Yankee Stadium. It was over 100 degrees, and I'm up in the next to the last row behind home plate in the upper deck. And they announced that Bowie Kuhn was there. This is the year after he had sat to that Sunday night World Series game in Cincinnati with no overcoat and about 12 pairs of flannel underwear. And so I get up and I yell, if the son of a bitch is wearing an overcoat to show people it isn't hot.
Hey, George, would you share some of your memories of the All-Star experience that your dad had, who he played with or against, or any of that? I love hearing your dad talking about your dad.
Well, I'm interested in hearing what Hal and Alan were talking about, and yourself about All-Star games. My experience was a little bit different because my dad actually played, and in '43 he was the starting right fielder for the American League. Scored a run and was playing against. There were about 4 Hall of Famers in the American League and 4 future Hall of Famers in the National League. So even though it was a wartime year, they had a lot of really good talent on the field. I absolutely agree with Hal. As much as I love baseball, I just cannot watch the All-Star game. I really couldn't care less. Here we are, we're on our podcast, and supposedly the All-Star game is on. I'm sure I'll never watch one inning of it. To me, it's a made-for-TV event. I think it's lost all its glamour because of interleague play, and I agree with Hal about that. Very, very much different All-Star game than what I was used to. My dad was on 4 All-Star teams. He played in the '43 game as a starter, played the whole game, but he was selected in '39 and '44, was hurt both years, so he didn't play. And then the '45 game, he was selected, but the game was canceled because of World War II, and they played an exhibition game instead. So Washington played an exhibition game against Brooklyn. And, it's just, there was great pride, I can only tell you, from players that I knew that because of my dad talked about tremendous pride, which league was better. And the players really went all out. And it's just a wonderful experience. But today, you got players that are mic'd up playing the game. You got the home run derby the day before. You got all this craziness moving the All-Star game for political reasons or whatever it is, from Atlanta to Denver. And, the people in Atlanta were hurt. The people in Denver, the stadium, people near the stadium with businesses, they benefit. But all those people in Atlanta, they lost a lot of money. It's become a huge money-making effort. But I like the original concept. The All-Star Game was, like Hal said, Midsummer Classic. Who's better, the National League or the American League? Today, I don't think you can say that. The players play against one another. They know one another. And as you guys are talking, they're switching franchises, switching teams from league to league. It's just a totally different animal.
Yeah. Hey, I don't understand how baseball has not lost its exemption. I can't think of the word I'm looking for.
Antitrust.
Right. Antitrust. Can Atlanta sue baseball and maybe cause them to do that? Because
no, I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay, because baseball is a private business.
All right, but
to make it worse, the baseball for years was the only sport that did have the antitrust. And when W. Bush came in, he gave it to the other three: football, basketball, and hockey. So they all have it now.
Right. Oh, okay. So there's very little chance of them losing that.
Very little, yeah.
Okay. That was just my curiosity. George always likes to know what the topic of the shows are going to be well in advance. I'm going to tell you what the topic of the next show when we get together. It's going to be wartime baseball. You and David Hubler, George, are going to lead the conversation. How does that sound?
Thanks for giving me a heads up, Ralph. I'll have to study that and see if I can come up with something.
With anything that might have, wartime baseball. What's that about? I don't think there's much preparation for you. You know it all, and David Hubler's. You guys combined. You helped David Hubler very much on a book about wartime baseball, the Nats and the Grays.
Right, and, I did. David asked me, and I was happy to help him with it. And I know with your book coming out, Ralph, I'm hoping that I was able to contribute a few bits of knowledge for yourself as well.
Absolutely.
Well, that's good, Ralph. That's good to hear because I can talk baseball, I can talk wartime, old time baseball all the time, but I am not somebody who loves the game so much that I can really relate to the way the game is being played today because I just can't. My memories,
I'll tell you
my memories of the game are being around it and knowing and learning, from my father being a former player and knowing personally some of the players that, were great players during their own era. So I'll be happy to, contribute whatever I can in the next podcast we have. I'll be looking forward to it.
Does anybody want to hear a funny story at an All-Star game?
Sure.
Okay. This was the game in San Francisco in 1961. Mantle and Ford got out there a day early. And they went out to the golf course. Spent most of the day on the golf course, and of course, when they came back, they charged everything to Horace Stoneham. And
club, right?
Yeah, and Stoneham said the only way I'll forgive that is if Ford strikes out Mays in the All-Star game. If Ford couldn't get Mays out to save himself in those games, and the story was that. Mays comes up and Ford gets 2 strikes on him. And Ford loads one up. And he threw a spitball and Mays struck out on the spitball and all of a sudden Mantle was jumping up and down in center field. And nobody knew why.
That's a great story. Horace Stoneham, the man who took our team away. Give me what was the main reason that the Giants were gone? What was, I'm going to ask Hal Bock this. What was the main reason that the Dodgers and New York City couldn't get it together? Was it Robert Moses? Was it Wagner? Hal Bock?
I think it was Robert Moses mostly. He was a kind of a kingmaker, and he would not give O'Malley the geographical territory that O'Malley wanted, which happens to be where Barclays Center is now located, the home of the Nets and the Islanders. That is downtown Brooklyn. It was prime geography, and Moses would not surrender it. He would not give it to the Dodgers. So the Dodgers said, fine, we'll go elsewhere. And in order for the Dodgers to go to California, he had to have somebody come with him. And Stoneham was a willing partner. Stoneham was headed for Minneapolis. They were going to go to Minneapolis. But O'Malley went to him, and they made a deal, and off they went to California. California, here I come. And
does O'Malley get any credence whatsoever that anything that he's hated in New York, absolutely despised. The jokes about 3 bullets, who do you shoot? Shoot O'Malley twice, that kind of thing. Is there anything redeeming about the man other than Campanella Day, where he honored Roy Campanella and set him up with some retirement money? Anything at all redeeming that, from a New Yorker's standpoint?
Nothing I can think about.
Okay.
Nothing I can come up with. No, he wanted to make a buck, and he saw gold in California, and he took it. He got prime real estate in California, downtown Los Angeles, Chavez Ravine, which is now the oldest park in baseball. And I'm told, I haven't been there in many years, but I'm told it is still as immaculate as it was on day one. So, it's quite a contrast to Ebbets Field, where they were playing here in New York. So he did what was best for him.
Correcting you is not something I do often or aspire to. The oldest parks in baseball are Fenway and
well, of course, yes,
and
you're
Wrigley.
right. Yeah, you're right, of course.
But they're old. Chavez Ravine is old, but still immaculate, still kept up beautifully.
Yes.
I digress there. This was a terrific show, and I thank you guys for your company week after week.
Well, look forward to our next podcast, Ralph, in about a month, and I will do my best to prepare any information I could provide to our audience and to our panelists.
That'll be great. Wartime Baseball. Our guest tonight on Lovin' Baseball when we were 12, Alan Blumkin, George Case III, and Hal Bock.
Yes, she is here.
Adios, everybody. Thank you for listening. Give books to the Head Start program, kids' books. Take them over there, and you'll help the world. Every community has a Head Start program. Kids need to develop a passion, become school literate or school ready, and get a head start. So box up some new and or lightly used children's books, and they will always be appreciated in your community. I thank you. I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network.
Ralph, can I talk to you for a few minutes after this?
Good night, everybody.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Okay. Yes, we'll stick on the line, and I will say good night to everybody listening. Here we go.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.